Hello.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm fine. Can't complain. Nobody will listen.
Sorry I missed your presentation last week. Did it go?
Uh, I think it went too long.
Oh, okay.
I tried to cover, I covered the United States. It's a little too much. Nobody has, nobody has complained yet, but I'm sure they, I'm sure that's what they will say if you ask them.
Gotcha.
Nobody said that. Maybe they don't want to hurt my feelings, but I, I timed it out and I thought it was under 40 minutes, but apparently it wasn't.
Well, no pun intended, but you had a lot of ground to cover, so
Yes, I did. And
Sorry.
I even cut some of it out. When my first,
I'm good to go get it.
Yeah.
Am I correct that I need ice cream?
yes, you are.
We're going shopping tomorrow, so we got to figure out the list.
ice cream is definitely very important.
Oh,
Especially-
definitely is. Definitely.
Especially if you can get the Tillamook.
Oh,
Get
that's
the
good
what?
stuff.
Tillamook ice cream.
I'll try it tomorrow. You're the
That
second
is
person who
that is
said
the
that.
very that is the very Susan will agree. It's the very
Yeah.
best ice cream.
It's really
Okay.
nice and creamy. Don't look at the nutritional panel.
Ice
Never
cream
look.
should not have a nutritional pad.
Exactly.
That's
We-
not why you eat ice cream.
One of the places we were at, and I did not show it in last week's presentation, was we were in the Tillamook factory, the creamery. I posted that picture
Oh,
on Facebook. But nobody was working that day for some reason. They did give you simple cheese.
They have good cheese too.
They have great cheese. They have great butter. It's a co-op. I didn't know that, but it's a co-op.
Oh, really?
Yep.
There you
I'm
go.
so short. I'm gonna go get a pillow to sit on. So I don't.
There's pillows right there.
Get a step stool.
Well,
I'm not that short.
she's sitting on an ottoman, but it's just lower than my chair. So
There we go.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Say, I'm not short. I'm just tall
Yeah.
enough that my feet reach the ground, right?
Oh.
So anyhow, Susan, what I prefaced my presentation with is that I shot last, now I keep saying last year. It is last year that I did the trip. 2 years ago, I did a longer trip. 2 years ago, I shot 21 or 23,000, 21,300 photos. Last year, I shot 8,300 photos. That's still a heck of a lot of photos.
It is.
how many are good?
All of them.
Okay.
Okay.
However, there's a lot, some of them are not good. Some of them are out of focus. I was going to show one of a road runner last week. But I was not happy with the quality of the photo. With a road runner, you don't get a lot of time to focus and shoot. There it is. Make the picture, get out of there. Cause boom, boom, here's gone. Bob, did you think it was too long?
So. We've
You
had
can say-
worse.
Well, you can say yes if you thought it was too long.
No,
I
it was
thought-
interesting. It is what it is.
Okay.
We have no place else to go.
Okay. I'm not fishing for compliments. I just looking for feedback. I thought it was too long after I I would cut a couple more things out.
You can always talk faster.
I try that, but then then I get my tongue twisted. So anyhow, I'm still working on photos. I don't know if I think I'm a little bit more. I think I'm a little bit more than halfway, but I'm not sure. On last year's trip. The year
That's a
before,
winter project, not a summer project.
I've been working on them since October. Of course, there's other things that pop up like taxes. I had to rewire or I had to play electrician and install two detectors in the RV. They detect carbon monoxide and propane. So unlike your smoke detectors in your home, where you just change the battery, these you have to take the whole thing out. They're hardwired in. Take the whole thing out and replace the whole thing. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Yeah. If I tilt it a certain way there, this is the old one I took out. There's two of them in there.
Well, one of the things, Willa was cleaning out her desk and she found an old DVD of the 2008 NVPS portfolio project.
Oh,
Somebody made a video, okay, and it's sort of interesting. I got to figure, I'm working on getting it so I can put it up on Facebook, but somebody's narrating it. I have no idea who it is. Reads the artist statement and then shows the pictures and
Comments.
and comments. For the old members, you recognize the names,
Not all of them.
and the new members, you'll recognize some, like Georgette's 2008 portfolio is on there, and I believe it was flowers.
Yes, it was.
No,
well, what you'll have to do, you'll have to convert it to digital, or it is digital. You'll have to, you're more than likely, well, not necessarily, but I think the better solution, depends on how long it is post it to YouTube and then make a link from Facebook to the YouTube.
okay, yeah. Jeff sent me. I asked Jeff Hancock, and he sent me a link to, I forget, some website, but they were asking too many questions or wanted too much information from me to do the conversions, but I'll check out the YouTube link and see if we can do that. And I'll get it posted. But
Hey,
as I
Bob, do you
said,
still have a computer that has a DVD drive?
yes,
Oh, okay.
don't
I was gonna say-
I mean computers don't come with PCs don't come with DVDs anymore.
No.
Mine's only a year or so old.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like I've got a Surface and it doesn't have a DVD drive. It doesn't have any drives other than USB. So, but if you ever get in that position, the public libraries have a thing called Memory Depot, and they've got equipment to convert everything. So, VHS tapes, DVDs, audio sets.
Yeah, this is a .exe, an executable file. So, but it's a good idea. I'm going to check YouTube out and see what I can do, and then I'll post it on NVPS. And you know,
I have the capability of converting VHS tapes, digitizing them. I did have what's the Adobe? I forget. Anyhow, the Adobe software where you can edit video. Premiere. I had Premiere, but It's $20 a month, and I wasn't using it, so I was just spending $20 a month for no reason. So
I
I
still have
stopped
a
it.
VHS player in the house attached to the TV. I haven't used it in,
20 years.
20, God knows how long, and a DVD player attached to the TV, but
I have this. Here's a VHS. You can't see it; it's out of frame. But I have a VHS player. It will uh, transfer from VHS to DVD if I want it. But what I have instead is I have uh, outputs that go into a device that converts the VHS to digital, and then it saves on my computer as a MPEG file.
oh well. Technology keeps moving.
Yep.
And the equipment just sits there on the shelf.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh,
Hey, John, rather than typing a reply, I don't know if Memory Depot does 8 mm, but if you just Google Memory Depot, Fairfax County Public Library, it'll take you to the page and it'll tell you what they have. Most of the libraries have a flatbed scanner, and then different other libraries have different equipment. So
Oh,
it just depends on which branch is closest to you, and if there's a certain thing, like I think there's only one library that has the ability to convert vinyl records to digital. And
Oh.
then there are some, I think, film movie medias that they accept, but I don't remember what.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been using it for several years now, and I love it. It's a great way to, an affordable way to convert all of your old, family history stuff. If you need to do that, because I had some like really huge old family portraits that are like 100 years old type of things, and it doesn't
Oh.
fit on my little office scanner that we have. So
I also have a turntable record player, if you will, that plugs into the USB port and automatically converts the sound from a record uh, to digital.
Is it a good recording?
I have not used it as yet. It's one of those things that I'm trying to get around to it. I got too many other things going, but I have in the past, and I forget how I did it now, but I have converted not all, much of my record collection to digital, and I did it a different way now that I bought this thing, and I've had it for probably a dozen years. It's just sitting in the box. I haven't brought it out yet. It sounds
Did
okay.
you put it on a hard drive or?
Um, I have, no, I have a whole boatload of DVDs
Oh,
behind me right now. Now, there are some, um, Susan, is there a way for me to play sound without a video or just,
well, like if you have your microphone on and you play something, it's going to come through your microphone.
uh,
Otherwise, you'd have to share your screen and check that little box to share your audio.
okay, well, let me quickly, um, I know where to go. I just have to go there. Uh, all right. John asked, let's see. Oh, okay, the tremolos. See, well, okay. I think that's enough to give you an idea. What do you think, John?
We didn't hear anything, Alan.
Oh,
Yeah, I
really?
couldn't hear it. No.
Oh. Oh, you know
But-
why? Because when I
Why?
plug in my headset, I
I was gonna tell you, I was gonna say that looks like you were bebopping right along there, but
I
Yeah.
was.
all by yourself.
The music was from 1968, so oh lordy. Yeah, share
All the younger people are really laughing right now.
well, let's see. I got share screen. Oh, I got yo, did you give me permission or am I looking at something that I'm not supposed to? Susan.
No, you should have permission. I think I already
Okay,
checked
am
the
I-
box.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's see. Basic. I don't know where the heck I am here. Why I can't see where I'm at. Oh, share. No, is that it?
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, I see. And okay, where's the music part? That's all. All right. Let's see. Let's see. H D music. Huh. Now. No. Huh. Well, let me go back here.
Oh.
This would be better. Okay. There we go. 1965. All right. Now, where's the music thing? The sound.
When you click to share screen, there's a box down on the bottom right, I believe. It's been a while since I've looked for it. That you have to tick to share your audio
Well,
or things like that.
wait a minute. What's that? No. Ah, wait a minute. There's share sound.
There you go.
All right. Share sound. Okay. Tell me if you can. Can you hear that?
Yep.
Oh, no, I'm not hearing it, but
My grandma and your
sorry
grandma
about
sitting by the fire. My grandma told your grandma, I'm gonna sit
Oh,
your
now I
grandma
hear it.
while you're talking about hey now, Aiko ande, Giacomo fino anane, Giacomo finane. Look at my king, oh.
Okay. So that is
Oh, there's never been a woman who could treat me like you do, who could trample on my pride and play around as much as you.
okay. Now, John, if you heard it,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, thanks.
Now, I also have to let you know that I have some other tools to use. it's like photography. You have Photoshop, Lightroom, I don't care, whichever. And you work the photo. The same way with the audio. I have some audio software that I can work the audio as well, clean it up a little bit if there's pops and things like that. Hi, Tammy.
How you doing, sir? It was a race to the mute button.
I got it. So anyhow, John, that's the thing.
Alan, what
Thank you.
software do you use for audio post?
Let's see. I have to look. Let's see. I think it's on my desktop. I'm not sure. If not, well, first of all, I can't see it here. I have a piece of software. Lordy. It's just finding stuff on my desktop. That's the hard part. I can record, if I go into a website and it's playing and I want to hear music, I play the music, I can actually record the sound that's coming through my speakers and save it. Now, desktop, I got so much stuff, I can't see anything. Hold on, let me. Oh, SoundForge. I have SoundForge. I think it's from Sony.
Yeah,
And
I've seen that one before.
Okay.
My son uses that a lot.
Yeah, I have that and not everything's showing up for me here. Desktop. Okay. I have something called well, it comes out to Now Smart. I have something called Now Smart. But it's recorded somewhere else. Oh, there it is. Okay, what is this called? Audio Record Wizard. Audio Record Wizard. So it records anything that's coming through the computer. It records and it saves it. And then I go to the Sony. It saves it in the folder that I just mentioned, called Now Smart Recordings. And then I go into the Sony, the SoundForge, and pull it out and clean it up that way. Am I making sense?
Yeah, it kind of sounds a little similar to the way an analog tape recorder used to do. You plug it in, it puts it on tape rather than digital.
Yeah, although back in, when I first started using a tape recorder, that was 1962.
Alan,
Yes, ma'am.
Alan, I hate to break in, but we need to, I'd
Yes,
like to
you're
check
right.
in with our speaker before tonight's meeting, if you don't mind.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, James, hi. I see you there. Will you?
Hello, just unmuting myself. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
Hi. How are you? Is there anything that you need from us before we get started this evening?
I don't think so. Just, make sure I have privileges to share my screen. And other than that,
Yep,
Okay.
you're all set for that.
okay, great.
That's Susan Blaylock. She's our web guru here.
It's always good to have a web guru in the crowd.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Nothing goes wrong now.
No, no,
Counting
no.
on you,
Good
Susan.
job.
Everything will be fine. Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure we were all set.
Yeah.
Good. Where are you
Ginger?
coming from, James? Where are you?
Right now, I'm in Brooklyn, in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is where the Verrazano Narrows Bridge touches down on the Brooklyn side. It's the bridge that connects Staten Island to Brooklyn. So it's South Brooklyn. If you ever watch the New York Marathon, the start of that race goes across the Verrazano Bridge and lands in my neighborhood.
Cool. Yeah, we have some New Yorkers in our group.
Well, I'm originally from Fairfax City, Virginia, though, which is why I'm particularly excited to be here.
Oh, really? Where'd you live in Fairfax?
In what would be called Old Lee Hills of Fairfax City, you know.
Ah, yeah, I was 2 blocks from Woodson for many, many years before moving further south. And I can tell you one thing, I certainly miss that commute to our club meetings. It's a lot longer now. So what
Yeah.
took you to New York?
Just the excitement of the big city, really. Maybe a girl was involved, but yeah, maybe a little bit both.
Well, that would certainly make the big city more exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that was the cause for the excitement. Yeah.
Well, that's good too. Now, Georgette's getting ready to move to Fairfax City. I was wondering if she knows where you used to live. Is your neighborhood still there?
Yeah, it's renamed though in the recent renaming of kind of Confederate neighborhoods. So it used to be called Old Lee Hills, and now it's called, I think, Daniels Run. I don't know, something Daniels Run.
Yeah, I think I know where that was. We used to walk over to the 4th of July parade.
Yeah, that's very, walkable from my house. And Fairfax High School was the high school I went to, and also just a few blocks away.
Cool.
So,
A local.
yep,
Hey.
yep. That's why I think this is just so cool that I wish I had known about the Northern Virginia Photographic Society when I was growing up there. How long have you all been around as an organization?
Oh gosh, guys, 64?
Wow.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Just look at us. A long time.
That's so funny.
Yeah, well, I was looking at our member list today, and I was looking at our treasurer Tom Brett. He's been a member since 1998.
Wow.
There are a few other people who've been around that long. Little less me. I was 2009, so.
Yeah, I did leave Virginia pretty much in '84, I guess. And other than like 1 year back where I was a courier driving around, I've been in either New York or Boston the rest of that time. So. Yeah, the East Coast megalopolis is my stomping
Oh,
ground.
that's true. That's true. It really is just one big city at least from New York to here.
Yeah. I actually have another photo project that's about pictures I made from the Amtrak train between New York City and DC, because my parents lived in Fairfax until they passed away, so I made that trip a lot over the past 15 years.
I think that's the way to go if you're going up to New York.
When I was growing up, my father made me get in the car and we drove across the Verrazano Narrows Bridge the day it opened.
Yeah, that was in November of 1964.
Correct.
Well, that's
I wasn't
fun.
around, but yeah, it's a beautiful bridge. I think, maybe the most beautiful bridge in New York. It's the longest suspension bridge in America. It beats the Golden Gate Bridge by a few feet.
The past couple of years, while they've been repairing the roadway, it's a little bit off-putting driving over it when you can see water to the left, or when they were redoing all of the road work. But
well, as long as you're not seeing it right in front of you.
Well,
many years ago, Will and I did Bike New York, and we have to bike over the bridge.
Yep.
And it's sort of fun, but then you get close to the expansion joints. And if they didn't have pads over it, you would have gone into with a bicycle into those expansion joints and never came out. I've never seen anything that big.
Yeah, it's in high winds, they still close it down regularly because those expansion joints move so much, it sways so much, the bridge, that yeah, they close it regularly.
The ferry is much more fun.
Which one?
The Staten Island ferry is a heck of a lot more fun.
Yeah,
What-
I like it on the water there.
What they need is a bike and walking path. That's what the Verrazano Bridge is missing. It is just cars. So I did run the marathon one year. Once was enough, but and it was so much fun to just walk over that bridge or run over that bridge. But that's it. I don't know. They priced it out. It would be like 300 million, I guess, to add a walking or biking lane.
Trouble is, it's a very steep bridge. If you're going to bike or run over it, you
It's
know.
uphill
It's
all the
up-
way.
Uphill all the way.
Yes.
James, I've got a quick question for you. There's a picture over your left shoulder. What is that?
This painting.
Yes,
this
that
one?
one.
That's a painting from a wonderful, also Northern Virginia painter named Jeff Duca. And it's kind of like a fairground in a lonely kind of empty landscape. So yeah, he's a great painter, Jeff Duca, DUKA.com. If anyone's looking for some art, he takes commissions. And yeah, we have a lot of his work.
I was just wondering if that was one of your photographs. It's fairly surreal, so I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, I mean, I do like fairs, and we'll see a couple pictures from fairs, and so maybe that's why he gave it to us. He knows that I like the lights of the fairgrounds.
Nice. Well, it is 7:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We just
Okay.
cat on the floor. Hi there, everybody. My name is Ginger Wurspatricka. I am this year's president of MVPS. Welcome to tonight's program. Very welcome seeing all of your faces, and I hope I see you at the firehouse also. Before we get started, do we have any new members or guests this evening? If you're out there and you're new, please introduce yourself to us. We'd love to meet you. All right. Quiet night then. Okay. Then I'm going to ask for board announcements. Tell us what's happening in the next couple weeks.
Hi, Ginger. It's Deb Rose, along with Tana Evely for Portfolio Project. And next week, come out to the firehouse because we will be having our second preliminary review for the second group of Portfolio Project participants. And they are fantastic. It'll be a really fun evening. Come and support everybody, see the great work that they've put together. It's a great learning opportunity and a great chance to share and hear about these great photos and portfolios everybody's put together. And so we look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Great, I agree. Even if you don't have a portfolio, these are very good learning experiences. So definitely come and participate. We'd love to see you. Other announcements?
Hey, Ginger, it's Jim
Yes, sir.
Sinsheimer. Just wanted to remind everyone that our next competition is on the 19th of this month. It's a themed competition involving gears, sprockets, and wheels. And obviously, the pictures are to contain wheels, sprockets, and gears in some form or another. Our judge is Deborah Loeb-Boren. She's in New York, and this will be a Zoom meeting, so all the submissions should be digital. There will be no prints this time. And I think the web page, the entry page opens up in about a week. I think it's a week from Friday or Saturday. any rate, we hope to see a lot of entries this time and look forward to seeing everyone on the 19th.
Hey,
Super.
Jim, shouldn't
Yeah.
the entry period be open now?
Is,
Should have been
is it
open
open
yesterday.
now?
No, it should be open as of yesterday.
Okay, I don't,
Well, I haven't seen an email yet, but it's usually 2 weeks in advance.
yeah, I haven't
convocation.
seen the email. We'll check into that.
All right, thank you.
Check into that. Yep.
How about the Wounded Warrior Project while you're there, Jim?
At this point, first of all, the lodge is getting near completion. The appliances were delivered. They're doing the final painting. They're supposed to start landscaping in about a month. They have a scheduled opening in May. But I've not heard back from them as far as any artwork selections. I don't think that's really on their forethoughts at this point in time. Hopefully we'll hear from them in the next month or so.
Great. So after they pick their colors and are working with their decorator.
Well, yeah, we'll see if they have a decorator. I don't know if they do.
All right. So this is a great opportunity. Jim, what is, you said that they're looking for this time for artwork?
Well, they're looking for peaceful, calm images, nice landscapes, water, anything that's calming, because they're now concerned about the reaction of PTSD to any artwork that's installed in the facility. That isn't to say that what we put in before hasn't been appreciated and is much appreciated, but I think this one they wanted to focus on a lack of emotion. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
And they're looking for large pieces. If anybody wants to, donate something very large, that's something they would appreciate.
Great. Another reason to print, guys.
Or get it printed.
Get it or get it printed.
Yeah.
Okay. Other board announcements.
Hey, Ginger, this is Steve Glentz with Field Trips.
Hi there.
Wanted to let everyone know this weekend is our next field trip. It's to Dyke Marsh. This is a place where we get some great opportunities for some wildlife photography. But even if you're not into the wildlife, they have an attached marina nearby, and I find great shots there all the time. This Saturday, though, the weather does look like it might be raining. We'll let you know by maybe Thursday or so. But the forecast kind of looks like we might be doing it on Sunday instead of Saturday. But keep your eyes open.
Okay. Oh, and it says this is the weekend we turn our clocks ahead.
Ahead 1 hour, yes.
Okay. Thanks for the reminder. I would have forgotten. Okay. That's great. Any other announcements today? Okay. Alrighty. So what I'm going to do is turn the floor over to Gary.
Thank you, Ginger. Well, our speaker tonight, no surprise to anybody, will be talking to us about street photography. James Prochnik from Bay Ridge, as he mentioned before, will share his experiences making photographs of strangers wherever he finds himself, from the mean streets of Northern Virginia to the peaceful streets of New York City. Through stories and examples, James will take us through his process of how to overcome the intimidation factor in doing street photography. He'll tell us how to approach strangers, how to make pictures in the moment that you and your subject will both appreciate. James Prochnik is a Brooklyn-based photographer focusing on lyrical documentation of the social and environmental landscape. His practice as a wanderer searching for encounters, moments, and mysteries that provoke curiosity and express the poetic potential of the world and the photographic medium. James teaches photography online for Strudel Media Live and is the founder and editor of the New York City Photo Community, which is a web-based resource created to promote New York City-based photographers, events, exhibitions, and opportunities. James' photography has been featured in the New York Times, Lens Scratch, Humble Arts Foundation, and exhibited in the US and Europe. So James, I'm going to turn it over to you now and you can share your screen and just take it away.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, Gary. And thank you, Susie McIntyre, who's one of my students who introduced me to your organization. And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. Also, thanks to Alan Goldstein, who's showing the Verrazano Bridge in his background, actually, I noticed. Okay, so do we see my first slide now? Yep, okay.
Yes.
So yeah, my contact information is on the bottom, and I guess it's also in the materials on your website. I'm Plastic Army on Instagram. So I'm just going to launch right in here because there's a lot of slides. So yeah, I've always really loved photography, kind of my whole life, but it really wasn't until I started doing street portraiture that a switch flipped for me. Making street portraits was the practice that unleashed the mysterious force that other creative people were always talking about having, but I could never find, a passion. I loved making street portraits, and it became a passion for me. I became obsessed, to put it in a word. So what is a street portrait? Gary mentioned street photography. I think of street portrait or portraiture as a kind of subcategory of street photography. Classic street photography, I think of as being a candid encounter with the world where you don't ask permission. You're just out on the street, you make pictures, and you don't even necessarily talk to anyone or that you're photographing. But a street portrait, to me, is a portrait of a stranger that you cross paths with by chance, somewhere out in the world, somewhere beyond the confines of your home, and you do interact with them. You come up to them and you say that you're a photographer, and you ask permission to make a photo. So it shares with the larger category of street photography that it is these candid, serendipitous encounters, but it differs from classic street photography in that it's not candid. You do talk to someone, and you may even pose them a little, I suppose. So what's the point of making street portraits? Like, why make a street portrait versus candid? For me, it's kind of like, when I moved up to New York, I would look at, New York just has so many incredible people up here, and I'd look at someone and I'd glance at them and I'd maybe even stare a little, someone like this guy, his name's Shane, with his newborn baby. And it was, such an interesting contrast and juxtaposition of a newborn baby and all its innocence, and this father with facial tattoos and anarchy symbols, that I'd love to run home and, tell my wife about this incredible person I saw on the street. But that's all it was, kind of a verbal story. Or, I'd see a guy like this, I'd come home and I'd say, I saw the Pineapple Man on the streets of the Lower East Side. And, he had an incredible saffron suit on and he was holding a pineapple. It was just these incredible stories, and I wanted to somehow hold on to them and hold on to these encounters. So yeah, photography became the way that it became kind of a passport, you could say, to meet these people and talk to them for a moment and make photos of them. And really, it also was a way that allowed me just to express kind of my love for people and my love for the people wherever I found them, whether it's New York City or Virginia or across the world. I just think people are great. And, this person, a good example, I love their, the 1980s style of their outfit, and the big gold chain, and the eyes that are smiling. You can see kind of a joyful expression, even though she's covering her mouth. And then interesting chemical tattoos on her elbows. I don't know if there's any chemists out there in the Zoom audience who could tell us what formulas those are. I'd be interested. Or someone like this in Coney Island. His name is Robert Paul Champagne. A kind of hilarious sea captain on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean there. Or Egil, he's actually someone in my neighborhood in Bay Ridge that I ran into. And you know, when I see people like Egil, like in this encounter, you know, I'm fascinated by them because, you know, he's got like one look on his face, but then his shirt seems to have, you know, this galactic portal image that you wouldn't necessarily expect on a guy like this. And then his eyes to me look like he's actually been through that galactic portal and come back to share the stories. So it was great to stop him and talk to him, make a portrait. And then because he is in my neighborhood, I'd run into him at other times. So maybe the people aren't always strangers if you run into them again. This is Egil with his wife, Millie, who's also a kind of a character in the neighborhood. Bay Ridge, you know, is now kind of Russian and Middle Eastern, but it used to have Italian and a large Norwegian population. So there's still a Norwegian Day parade that happens every year that attracts Norwegian people all across the East Coast to Bay Ridge. So they're dressed up for that event. This is Ada, another person in my neighborhood. During the pandemic, I was spending a lot of time in my local park. I do like to make street photos in the city, but during the pandemic, I really did stay around in my neighborhood. I ended up making a whole project in my park, but Ada was one of the fantastic people. She'd come out, you know, overlooking the Verrazano Narrows that the bridge crosses over, and she'd soak up the sunlight. And she told me she came there because it reminded her of her home in Puerto Rico, where she grew up, kind of the view of this hillside and the water below. And she was also an artist and so expressive, you know, just incredible pose she went into for me. Another neighbor, kind of, his name's Larry, kind of old school Brooklyn character, maybe a generation before I moved here. Guys like Larry were the norm as opposed to the exception in my neighborhood. But yeah, I love his cigar. I love his, you know, I don't know, his whole face, his ears, his nose. Looks like he could have been a boxer or something. I don't know. But there was one problem with my newfound passion of making street portraits. It's kind of a big problem, and that's that I'm shy. I'm an introvert, and even all of you people are making me really nervous. So that's a problem if you have to go up to strangers to make pictures. So what do you do if you're like me? How do you approach strangers in the world and make a photograph with them? So that's what I'll be going into tonight. Number one, I would say, is be prepared. You know, when you go out, check the weather, make sure your camera's settings are appropriate for the weather. If it's a cloudy day, you want a faster ISO. If it's a sunny day, you want a higher aperture. So check all those things before you go out. Check that your battery, you know, your camera batteries are charged. Nothing is worse than going up to someone to make a street portrait and then your battery goes dead. So it's happened to me, so don't let it happen to you. Yeah, check the settings. And, you know, if you're not technical with the camera, just set it to, you know, automatic. That's fine. And honestly, even a smartphone these days, if it's a nice sunny day, smartphones, you know, my iPhone can make fantastic portraits. So when you should be prepared, and when you walk out the door, your camera should be out in your hand or around your neck, ready to go. Actually, I'm going to show you the camera that I use. This is a Canon R5 mirrorless, and I have this handy wrist strap. So yeah, when I'm outside, this camera's in my hand at all times. So number two, after you've made sure that your camera is ready, check your vibe. So if you're like the two girls on the left in this picture, you're ready to go. Your vibes are sunny, you're cheerful. People are gonna like meeting you. If you're more like the girl on the right, maybe have a snack or something before you go out, or maybe have some coffee or whatever you need. You want to get to this point where you're all happy and ready to go outside, because our energies are very much sensed by people that we approach. And if we're in those bad moods, if you've had a spat with your partner or kids or something, let that all go away before you go out to make street portraits. You want to be happy and sunny. So once you are in a good mood, your camera's prepared, how do you decide who to approach? For me, I mean, I'm partly kind of like the cat on this guy's lap. As I'm walking through the city, I'm alert and I'm just kind of scanning in an open way, sort of the way they taught me back in driver's ed when I was driving down the road. You have to keep kind of an awareness of both sides and everything that's happening around you. Just always be looking around. Sometimes for me, the pictures I'm making, I think of it sort of like I'm casting a movie or finding characters for a novel. This is Jason and Rad. I was unusually for me out at night in the East Village, and I was by a deli that kind of was illuminating the crowd that were walking by, and I just saw these two guys, and they had amazing kind of facial tattoos, like the Black Widow spider on Jason's face on the left, and Rad, the guy on the right, had that lighter, a lighter in his ear and a tattoo of the word lighter over his eyebrow. And they immediately fell into this pose, and yeah, I made a shot, and I was happy with it. Let me just check one thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, another thing. This is a kind of sad story, but I'll just bring it up briefly. Like, I most of the time I get people's information when I make the picture. I hadn't gotten their information, but eventually I ran into someone coincidentally who was able to identify them, and I learned that Rad had passed away. But I also got Jason's information, and I was able to send Jason this picture of him and his buddy. And yeah, I can't tell you what it meant to him, he said, to get this photo of them when life was good. So yeah, it's sort of like I'm casting a movie, but really it's basically whoever interests me in the moment. So I think it's really key to kind of follow your intuition when you're looking for someone to photograph. And the moment that you find yourself interested or intrigued by someone, you kind of have to act. This woman, just the her heavy lidded gaze was so interesting, like this pink do-rag in her over her hair was interesting. There's kind of like a toughness and a swagger to some people that I find myself really interested in. Maybe another example of that. Again, with the anarchy tattoos on the face, radical move. And from my generation, very strange to imagine doing that. I'm attracted to the color red, and you'll probably see that in many of the photos. So oftentimes just people wearing red. I don't know. I'm like a bull, and I don't know if it's my Aries Ram or what, astrology. But yeah, whenever I see red, I'm just like immediately drawn to it. I love people with a great smile, and I love when people with a great smile have a doppelganger puppet with a great smile that echoes their great smile. This guy's wonderful. I love people that seem like they're kind of walking out of a different time period. I don't know if anyone's familiar with a photographer named Jamel Shabazz. He made this great photo book called Back in the Day. He has several photo books, but he had documented New York City, kind of the fashion, the b-boys and hip hop styles of the 80s in New York. And these books that he made, this is, I think, his first one and maybe his most famous, became really influential on New York fashion generally, and clearly influential on these two guys who almost seem to be stepping out of the pages of that book. And it was exciting for me to kind of pay homage to a photographer, Jamel Shabazz, that I love so much, and make a picture in his spirit. Yeah, I love sweet moments between people, moments of intimacy. I love that this woman is standing on the skateboard, and the way that light is illuminating her hair, that springtime love. I love people whose personality just seems to pop off the screen when I look at the picture. They just have such big personalities, and you know it's going to come across in a photo. This is down in New Orleans. I like when people are kind of doing something too. You know, I had seen this person smelling the cherry blossoms. I understand in DC they're going to be March 21st is going to be the peak cherry blossoms. But yeah, I loved kind of his whole pink head and his pink ear, even the pink zit on his neck, you know, the way it worked with with the cherry blossoms. Lately, I find myself more interested in kind of quiet moments like this young boy sort of staring off, introspective moments. Um, and I like photographing, although it's more challenging in some ways, but just what I would call ordinary people. This is people down by the water, a father and a son. They were listening to a boombox, classic rock. The dad was having a cigarette, and yeah, they were just enjoying the water down there. So you found someone who you'd like to make a photo of. What's next? You've spotted someone on the street. What do you do? If you're like me, get used to having arguments with yourself. And the arguments go, you know, like, I just can't. Oh, they're not so great or interesting after all. Oh no, their friend just came up. I definitely can't approach them for a portrait now. What if they say no? Oh, I'm too young to take their photo. Oh, I'm too old to take their photo. Oh, I'm a man. I'm an old man. Oh, I'm this, I'm that. You know, you make up all these stories, or at least I do, almost immediately when you find yourself interested in making a street portrait. So it's really key to just shut those conversations down before they spin out of control. This ash won't last. You know, I saw this guy in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, you know, smoking this incredible cigar, and the ash is like at least an inch long. You know that ash is going to fall in a moment. You can't have those conversations that in your head that are trying to talk yourself out of the photo. You got to go up. You got to say, hey, can I make a picture of you? So when you see someone who catches your eye, act on instinct. Don't think, just approach them. I loved his rings on every finger, this guy. The longer you talk to yourself, the more likely it is that those internal voices trying to talk you out of the picture will succeed, or the subject will move on, which is even worse, and you'll miss the opportunity entirely. So don't have those conversations shut them down, just go up. So here's the approach that I use. I keep things really, really simple. I just say, hi, my name is James. I'm a photographer. I hold my camera up and I'm making portraits of people in Bed-Stuy or in Coney Island. May I make a portrait with you? Or may I make a photo with you? I find that really simple, really minimal approach is great because that is enough for most people to get a sense of you, to get a sense of your vibe, to get a sense of your energy. It's enough for them to decide whether or not you're harmless or a weirdo or, you know, some kind of possible threat to them. So yeah, you keep it really simple, but you know, they may have questions of their own. So what if they say, you know, what's this picture for? Hold on, I'm just gonna move my screen over a little so I can read. You know, where is this picture going? These are kind of common questions. And here's another opportunity, I think, when these questions come up to sort of reassure people. And the way that you reassure them is by being honest to whatever your purpose really is. So it might be that you just saw a great picture, or it might be that you actually have an idea for doing a book of photos of people at the mall or something in DC. like Judith Joy Ross, an incredible photographer, did a whole portrait series of people by the Vietnam Vets Memorial Wall, for example. So you might say, I'm collecting stories around this wall. Whatever your purpose is, maybe it's just, I like to share pictures on my Instagram of the people I meet. Whatever it is, just be honest. And people know when you're being honest, you know, they can sense that. But still, people may be a little bit unsure. Maybe the simplicity of your approach and your answering their question wasn't enough, and they're a little bit on the fence. So at that point, what I sort of like to do is take the spotlight off them a little, because some people just feel, you know, self-conscious when someone comes up and is paying them attention that they didn't expect. So with this woman, for example, I told her how much I loved the little flower arrangement she had in the water bottle, and how her yoga mat almost looked like an angel wing was coming out of her back. And I probably definitely told her about the light, because I know there's reflected light hitting her face. And sometimes when you focus on that and just say, you know, there's this beautiful reflected light and it's coming down and it's illuminating your face and it's so lovely, then that makes people feel less self-conscious, because then in their mind they can say, oh, it's not, you know, it's not all this attention just on me. There's this beautiful light and I happen to look amazing in it or whatever. So sometimes that's enough to convince them. But what if they still say no? It's a possibility. And, you know, I live in New York City, so there's always another person. So a lot of times I'll just move on. You know, I've tried to convince them to make a picture and they've just said, no, I'm really not interested. And yeah, so, you know, don't give up. Just there's how many billions of people in the world? There's plenty of people. But what if they say yes? That's kind of the other problem, because now all of a sudden they've said yes, you have to make the photo. So what do you do? What are some things that I look for when I'm making a street portrait? So yeah, there's actually like a vampire legend or lore that says that a vampire can't come into your home unless they're invited in. So if someone has told me, if I've said, you know, may I make a picture, and they've said yes, I hate to put myself in the place of the vampire here, because I'm not a vampire, but at the same time, if the person has said yes, that to me is my invitation to make not only just one picture, but maybe several pictures, however many pictures I need to actually you know, make this interruption in their life worth it to them and worth it to me, because I do ultimately like to share the picture with them. So yeah, if they've said yes, it's time to make a picture. So there's a couple of factors I'm always evaluating with every street portrait. One of them is the background, like what background will work with this person? Are they good where they are? Will I have to move them? And then particularly for the kind of pictures I make, I think a lot about light. I really do love light that's an expressive part of the picture. For some people, you know, someone who's just incredibly interesting, you know, the light being like perfect golden light or something doesn't necessarily matter. But I almost always like light to be an element of the pictures that I make. So in the case of this young girl here, this was Halloween in Brooklyn, and I noticed that she, you know, had this great blue outfit, and I asked the parent, you know, may I make a photo of your daughter? And I had seen this interesting green door, and I thought it would work with the outfit the little girl was wearing, and so I said, you know, can you move into this doorway? And the girl moved in, and I made the picture, and yeah, so the background is really important. I thought it would be a nice clean background, so you didn't see all the other trick-or-treaters wandering around the neighborhood. And then, you know, she just happened to, the little girl made this great expression, like maybe she had knocked on the door and no one had answered. She didn't get her candy from this location. Here's a good example. I was up on 125th Street. I saw this interesting looking gentleman, and not only was he interesting looking, but he had this dog who was dyed pink and wearing the same saffron outfit that matched his outfit. So yeah, he was so interesting. I just asked him to make a picture. I made the picture, but it was kind of like, in New York City, especially, I mean, not everywhere, but the backgrounds can be cluttered and people in the backgrounds can kind of wreck the composition if there's too much activity going on. So I noticed this storefront gate that had been closed and was painted with these interesting colors. So I said, hey, do you mind moving over to the storefront? And I made the picture that for me was a much more successful street portrait, because not only did I have the same two interesting people, or this interesting pet and this interesting owner, Talik, but also a background that kind of simplified things and matched to a degree the outfits and the color of the dog. Sometimes it's just the light. I mentioned that I love light. I love the backlight here of this person. This is also something that's a little unusual. I'm a little further away from the subject in this picture. I am further away partly because I wanted, like, as you can see, the sun is coming directly towards my camera. So I had to block the sun by getting behind that tree. So the tree was blocking the sunlight. And then I could photograph the person and use the sun to do an incredible kind of halo rim light around their hair that sort of re-emphasize the kind of spiritual nature of that person. They seem like a seeker. I think they were actually doing yoga in the park that day. This was at a Pride event, or after the Pride parade in New York City. A lot of people gather in Washington Square Park after this parade, and this person here was using like a Pride flag as a drape that was perfect for me, because it blocked out the really chaotic, busy nature of Washington Square Park. So sometimes the people provide their own backdrop for you, and then the woman that he was with did this incredible, bending backwards pose. Some people do just know how to get in a pose in an incredible way. So 9 times out of 10, I'm not directing people, by the way. I'm just, maybe I've seen them do something like this, and I'm like, can you do it again? That's mainly how I might direct someone. This guy was in the Lower East Side, and he was waiting for a first date. And he was dressed up really great. Again, red, I'm so attracted to red. So there's this great red wall down in the Lower East Side, and certain times of year that the light kind of rakes across. And not only does it give me that clean background that I like, but with the light raking in that way, it sort of creates a geometry, some shapes that help to frame the figure within them. He was from Panama. He told me about Panama City, which I'm intrigued to go to one day. Anyway, I'm sure the date was successful. He was a very suave guy. And if I find a wall like that, sometimes I'll go back to that wall and see what else I can see on another day. So this is, maybe a picture that, I don't know, to me is, I mean, the girl's lovely, but maybe a little bit boring to me other than that. But it's on that wall I like. So she was wearing red, put her against the wall. I'll go back to certain places if they seem like they might be successful for making pictures. So once you found a background and the light is working, start making pictures. And if you're starting out in this, my advice is not to make just one. And maybe later, if you've really gotten comfortable, you can make one and move on. But I tend to make several pictures. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with this famous iconic picture by D.N. Arbus, Boy with Hand Grenade, 1962. It's made in New York City's Central Park. Incredibly expressive picture, the hand grenade toy in one hand and just the crazy clench of the fist in the other. But yeah, if you look at the contact sheet for that day when she made this photo, and she took she took 12 photos at least. I don't know, maybe this is just the contact sheet I've seen. And almost all the, well, in one of them the boy's not even in it, but in all the other 11, he's kind of just a normal boy of 1962. There's not that special thing that Deanne Arbus was looking for. So I get the sense that she kept making pictures until she found that one picture that became so iconic that we're now familiar with. And this is also, I think, a good picture to demonstrate the lesson that technical perfection is not necessarily what makes a great street portrait. I mean, if you look at this picture, there's a figure behind the boy, and the figure's coming out of the boy's head, their torso's coming out of the boy's head and their legs are coming out of the boy's head. That's something in general you'd want to avoid, but the emotional expressive power of this image is such that things like that, I doubt if people were to who knew the picture, they wouldn't even remember that there was this figure in the background interrupting the figure. So getting the emotion right is absolutely the most critical thing. Robert Frost, the poet, has a line that something like, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. You have to have these emotions, and that's what's going to help express them to people who look at your pictures. This is a photo of me on Coney Island, crouching down to make a picture taken by a friend of mine, Reuben Radding, also a Northern Virginia local. He grew up in Arlington, Virginia, a great street photographer. He's got a few great videos on YouTube that I recommend people check out under this Walkie Talkie series about street photography. Anyway, I'm crouched down here, and I will say that that's what I often do. I'm often not I'm using this 35 millimeter lens. So I find that if I'm a little bit below eye level, it's kind of a good angle for the pictures. Like when we do a classic selfie, we tend to, put the camera above us because typically the above picture is going to be a little bit more flattering. But I find that actually crouching down seems to be more effective for me. So this is the picture I was making in that moment where I was photographed of the two guys. But yeah, I think that successful portraits, and Susie, who took a class with me, will be familiar with this, are often about two things, the hands and the eyes. So if you get the hands right and the eyes right, that's oftentimes when you're going to have a successful picture. There's a famous scene in Sunset Boulevard where Gloria Swanson says, "All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up." And yeah, she is. Her eyes are incredibly expressive. Her hand is in this dramatic gesture. So yeah, that's sort of what you're looking for in a picture. So here's someone in the Crown Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn. A wonderful outfit with the pink blouse and the green fingernails and the watermelon purse. And she's wearing sunglasses, but the sunglasses are translucent, these pink sunglasses, so you can see her eyes and the expression, which I think is important. So yeah, her hands are great, her eyes are great, giving a great gaze to the camera. And then there's this interesting, insulation, pink insulation in the background of the picture that I think works with the whole composition. So composition, of course, always important as well. Here's a picture where, yeah, I think the way that the smoke is curling out of this man's cigarette and sort of gently wrapping around his fingers is great. And the way the light not only hits half of his face, but also kind of touches on his right eye. And then again, the light is forming that raking light. I'm going out typically later in the day, and so you get that raking light at the end of the day. It's also a kinder light, but it creates these geometries that, again, help to frame the figure within them. This is in Nashville, a street performer named Ralph. And, I've said that the eyes are important and the hands are important. And I think I think definitely the eyes I got here and the hands are kind of interesting, but also it can be other things. You know, he was a street musician, so for me, getting the ears right, like his ears you know, he has such big ears, and you know, making sure that everything was in focus. That was really important to me in this picture. This is Edgar. Actually, that's that same red wall that you've seen in two pictures behind Edgar. So I'm often in this area, this part of the Lower East Side. It's actually the first part of New York City that I moved to when I moved up here in 91. Anyway, I just saw Edgar here on the corner, and he was actually in a pose like this when I spotted him. And he was so introspective, just, you know, seemingly lost in his own thoughts, that I came up and I said, you know, may I make a picture of you? And he said yes. And here I did do a little directing. I said, you know, when I came up to you, you were in this position. Do you mind getting back into it? And he immediately got, you know, right back into the pose that I had seen. And it was kind of late day, but a little bit of light was still coming down into the scene, lighting part of his face. And yeah, it's one of my favorite street portraits. I haven't talked about it that much, but about aperture. Here, you know, you can see that I'm using a very fast aperture, so the background is very blurred out. You know, what is, I don't know, 1.2, 1 point, or maybe 2.2. I don't know. A very shallow depth of field here, and I do think that can be very successful when it works. But I just want to caution people that, like, I've taken so many bad street portraits because I had too shallow a depth of field. So yeah, like I do think when you have this really kind of shallow depth of field, you do want to nail the focus on the eyes. You want to get those things right. So yeah, as a general rule, I would say shoot maybe f3.5 or 4.0 and above. And as a secondary thing, I do love the shallow depth of field in this picture, but oftentimes in the city, I kind of like to get a sense of the city. Like I want it to be maybe a little bit blurred out, but I also want to, you know, like here, just they could be anywhere, you know, they're not necessarily in the city. We have no idea where they are. So it's nice to have some of that additional information. I think you see that actually a lot in nature photography, where there's kind of such an obsession with that bouquet in the background. It gets so blurred out that sometimes like birds can almost feel like a decal on over this, you know, completely blurred out background. So it's nice to have a little bit deeper of a depth of field, and importantly, it helps you not miss the focus on your subject. Again, with the red, I love red. You can tell I love red. And again, to the eyes, you know, this person did have sunglasses, these heart-shaped sunglasses, but I asked them, you know, could you please lift your sunglasses up? And having that direct gaze, I think, made this a much more powerful picture. You know, here was probably midday in New York City on Delancey Street. So it was a very bright day. So here's a very deep depth of field. You know, we're seeing all the way back in perfectly sharp focus, you know, to the very back of the image. But again, to gesture, this is, I think, such an important thing in a photo. So, you know, the tender way the girl's hands are on the stomach of her friend, the tender way that his hands are on the woman's hair. And then there can be just, you know, sort of lucky things like the slight tilt of her left leg, the way she's tilting her shoe up, and the slight breeze that's blowing her skirt. They all give a sense of the day. You know, we can tell it's bright, we can tell it's summer, and that slight breeze, you know, it gives an ease to the picture that I think complements maybe that expressive tenderness that these two people are showing for one another. I like when people are doing interesting things. You know, this guy was doing skateboarding in high heels. So, you know, in general, I like to photograph skateboarders I come across, but it's rare that I come across someone doing skateboarding in high-heeled boots like this person was. So yeah, I'll ask them if I can make a picture, and then I'll say, you know, maybe can you do one of the tricks you were doing? But then I will also just try to get a standard photo. So it's nice to get both. It's nice to get the photo in the action, you know, the thing that first attracted your attention, like this. And then it's nice to get the straight portrait. But even here, what, you know, their skateboard isn't static. It's tilted up. So there's a dynamic sense to it that I think makes the portrait a little more successful. This is at a annual parade for Maria Addolorata, I think it's called, in the Italian part of Brooklyn around Smith Street. So this woman, I don't know, she had such a beatific look at me, you know, I felt like I was in Catholic school. She was one of the nuns about to maybe scold me or tell me my homework was done wrong. And I wanted to show the saint that they were parading with. So I shot a very low angle. But then, you know, sometimes you also want to show what someone is holding. So they were holding these pamphlets to give out to people. And also their rosary beads. So yeah, it's nice to get more than just the portrait sometimes. So where can you find people? You know, I'm in New York City, so there's obviously a lot of people, but this is one of my very favorite street portraits I've ever made, and kind of the one that really launched me like into like saying, wow, there's something really interesting. Like I had done a lot of street portraits before this picture, but this was the first one where I was like, yes, this is that mysterious thing that I'm looking for. And this picture was made on the front lawn of my father's house in Fairfax City. You know, this was a neighbor, a guy that lived across the street from my father in here in Northern Virginia. And one of his buddies was actually being maybe arrested or interrogated by police officers on the street, and he had come out to see what was going on with his friend. And I asked him, you know, do you mind making a picture? So this was back in 2015, and it's still one of my favorite pictures, made right in Northern Virginia. Another one in Northern Virginia, in the parking lot of Courthouse Plaza, a local shopping center, of just kids hanging out in the back of the pickup. And, you know, that's something that recalled my childhood, you know, growing up in Northern Virginia and maybe hanging out with my buddies in the back of a pickup in a parking lot, you know, just finding a place to be with my friends. This is on Coney Island on the beach. Beaches are great places. You know, I don't know if you get to Ocean City or Maryland where we used to go, or Bethany Beach, but yeah, beaches are where people are relaxed and they're calm. So it can be a nice place to find people in that mood and find people more open, and, you know, they're not rushing to some place. They're just hanging out. So they have time for you to make a picture with them. Another one in Coney Island. If you get up to New York City and you're interested in street portraits, go to Coney Island in the summer. There's plenty of people there. Another from Coney Island. That's the parachute drop illuminated in the background, and this great woman with their you know, with a car on hydraulic lifts behind her. So yeah, parades, parties, festivals, great places to find people to photograph. This was the opening of an art exhibition at the Menil Collection in Houston. But, you know, there's so many art exhibitions in DC. Maybe there's an opening you could go to and see people, and they'll be dressed up for it. This was at the Washington, D.C. Pride Parade where I met this person. So Pride Parade's great place. This is where people are expressing their pride. So of course they're going to be happy to have a photograph made. This is the Mermaid Parade in Brooklyn at Coney Island, a wonderful parade every year that brings, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, and actually like hundreds and hundreds of photographers come to this Mermaid Parade. So this is maybe one thing to think about background. Like this is a very crowded event. 1 million photographers are around. So yeah, going into that low angle, again, it screened them all out. You don't see all those people and all those photographers. You just see the beautiful blue sky that goes so well with this mermaid's outfit. New Orleans has famously second line parades regularly throughout the season. These are the divine dames, that I think is what that DD stands for. This is a early morning celebration that happens in Brooklyn on Labor Day called Juve. It's a Trinidadian tradition. It's kind of a raucous, chaotic street parade that happens from like 6 in the morning till 9 or 10 in the morning on Labor Day Monday. And then following that kind of raucous, they call it dirty mass. There's pretty mass or pretty masquerade, where there's the West Indian Day parade and all these women in beautiful feathers, and yeah, quite a contrast between the dirty mass and the pretty mass. So state or county fairs are great. I used to love going to the Prince William County Fair down in Virginia, and the demolition drivers, like this guy James, he was always a treat to photograph. I photographed him several years. Mikey. I love this woman, whose childhood bends beside her. I would say, like in this great outfit, who's never lost her love for the state fair. Or this woman with her beautiful eyes and tattooed daddy's girl. So some things to watch out for. In general, I never photograph people eating food. Like, nothing is worse than when someone's eating and you make a photo. So if they're eating, look for other people, unless maybe, some exceptions to every rule. I like this photograph, but in general, if someone's eating, it's not going to make a good photo. They'll look bad, and it just doesn't work. Sunglasses, I've spoken about. If they're translucent, you can see the eyes, they're good. But if they're closing the eyes off, I think it's like shutting down a conversation. In this case, maybe I might have been a little too intimidated to ask him to take his sunglasses off. But in general, have people take their sunglasses off. I love people with big hair, but big hair, famously, like if you're using autofocus on your camera, it's going to tend to like focus on the front of the hair, and then their whole face will be out of focus. So if someone does have really big hair, make sure you're nailing the focus on their face, not what your autofocus thinks, which might make you miss the face. If you're in groups, or if you're photographing groups, that's a challenge. I mean, it's as you get into street portraiture, maybe you'll, become enthralled with photographing groups, but it's harder. It's just a harder thing to do. I think what works for me is to have a kind of a central figure, like this guy in the middle here, or even, these women. This is at that West Indian Day parade. They form, they just naturally form this, wonderful grouping of the 6 women. But for me, what made the picture was that central figure of one of their young sons, and his gaze right at the camera. If you're photographing homeless people or vulnerable people or marginalized people, I think you just have to really think about what you're doing and ask yourself why you're making the picture. Maybe just kind of have those ethical interrogations of yourself, maybe before you start taking pictures of homeless people. This guy actually was in Fairfax City too, right down in Fairfax Circle in a park behind a shopping center. He told me an incredible story of how he used to, before school, when he was a young kid, he would, like, I had seen him when I came up to him, he was like feeding a squirrel. And then he told me the story about how when he was a kid, he used to shoot squirrels before class. And that's what he would have for breakfast. He would have squirrel meat. He was embarrassed going into class, smelling like squirrel meat. This woman was in Baltimore, very intense. You can see that life has been rough. When I got home, I didn't realize this in the moment, but when I looked at the picture later, I saw that her wristbands were AA about doing the program. So hopefully her hard days were behind her, and they seem to be. Like she has water here, but yeah, a hard life. So again, maybe there's a consideration about sharing this picture. Maybe maybe it's not appropriate for your Instagram. Maybe it's only appropriate for a project that you're doing about addiction in Baltimore or something. Kids, you know, I never take a street portrait of a kid without asking their parent for the picture. You know, nothing is worse than if a parent like comes and sees you taking a photo of their child and you haven't asked permission. You know, that immediately is going to talk about vibes. That's a vibe killer. So kids are marvelous, expressive, wonderful, but ask permission from their parents if you're going to make photos of children. So my final words are, sometimes it's in the details. You don't even have to photograph people's face. You know, sometimes it's their outfit is so great. I love these tulip shoes. I love the smiley face on the back of this guy's head. Doesn't have to be their face. I loved, you know, this is one of my ultimate favorite New York City pictures. Like, I love this guy's tattoo of all the New York newspapers and the New Yorker magazine, like the logos of all those magazines. I love this picture. So that's it. I want to dedicate this talk to my sister Elizabeth. She's also a photographer. She's actually the one who got me into street portraits. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Humans of New York, but that's a guy who was making pictures of people and gaining their stories. And she got into that and started a 365 project. So I did it. And yeah, so all credit to my sister Elizabeth for getting me into street portraiture and really kind of turning me from just someone who loved photography into a serious photographer. And yeah, very last word, maybe you can screenshot this, but you know, so many great photographers have made fabulous street portraits. These are some of my favorites. So photo books are always a great way to learn more. And these are the masters of the art, I think, or many of the masters. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Hey, thank you, James. Those are some fantastic pictures. We've got a lot of questions for you. But before we ask the questions, I have to ask you to tell the story of the Pineapple Man.
Well, the Pineapple Man, there's actually something on the Lower East Side. You know, it's a very Latin area of New York City, and they have something called Lower East Side Festival. So like if you say Lower East Side kind of in a Spanish accent, I guess it comes out Lower East Side, like Lower East Sider. And so they have this festival. So he was a you know, just one of the neighborhood figures, but you know, dressed to kill on a big kind of celebratory day where there's bands playing music.
I guess the background question to that is, how often do you really get involved in finding out the story of the people that you photograph, or do you just take the photograph, thank you, you know, and all that kind of.
I mean, it all depends, you know, like that person had a lot of, I don't know, sycophants around them. So I did kind of like make the picture and sort of move on. But I love, you know, that's one of the most rewarding things is to talk to people and get a little bit more of their story and a little bit more of their background. I mean, yeah, for all I know, he might have even been a musician that was performing at that festival because he was just so fabulous.
Right.
But the great thing about talking to people and actually getting a little of the story is 100% people don't match your assumptions and your reductive way of looking at them. You know, we can't help but look at them and look at people that we don't know, strangers, and make a little story. I'm making stories about all of you, actually, just looking around. But, you know, I guarantee that if I spoke to you and learned about your background a little, it would in no way match whatever assumptions I might have about you. People are much larger. They contain many more multitudes than we think. And yeah, like particularly in our sort of time of a divided politics, I think it's great to realize that people aren't, you know, as one-dimensional as they can seem on social media, let's say. So
Gotcha.
yes, I encourage people to, if it feels right in the moment, to have a little conversation, because that can often be more rewarding than the picture. You know, sometimes your picture sucks, but you learned a great story or something.
Now I'm going to read some of these questions, and I have a few, but I'm not going to ask them right now. Okay, first question. do you need a model release for all these people you're taking pictures of?
That's a good question. And it's, it has a lot of meaning for me right now because I just ran into a situation. But yeah, in general, no, you do not need a model release for making pictures of people on the street. If your intentions are to share on Instagram or maybe make a book or maybe do a gallery show. In other words, if you have artistic intentions as opposed to commercial intentions. If you do have any commercial intentions for the photograph, yes, 100% you need a model release. So recently, someone who follows me on Instagram, they're a set decorator for a movie and they're doing a movie with Bill Murray, and they had liked some of the street portraits. And so they did need that release to use them as framed photographs on the wall of this set. So these days, most people have Instagrams, and I do try to get people's Instagrams. Like I ask them, do you have an Instagram? If so, here's my Instagram, contact me. I'll send you the picture or whatever. I'll get their information. And so I did have the information, and I was able to contact people and have them sign a model release after the fact. But a few of the people that they had wanted didn't want to do the model release. So yeah, if you think you might want to do something commercially with the photos, it is a good idea. And some book publishers I've heard are certainly more comfortable if you have model releases, if you were making a book project of some sort of street portraits, but it's not, the law is pretty clear that you don't have to have it. So again,
unless it's for commercial purposes.
Unless there's any commercial purpose.
So if you approach them and ask for model release after the fact because you've been approached, do they sometimes say, well, I'd like to be paid?
Yeah, that's exactly what they say. And yeah, so then it can be like awkward. So that's why it's great to get that model release. If you,
what's your response?
Well, my response, like I have no real commercial intentions with the photography. So I'm willing to, say I'll split whatever I get 50-50 with you. That's fine because, they deserve it. So yeah, that's what I do. And by the way, like I have an app on my phone that's called Easy Release. And it's an app that allows you to kind of get a model release in the field. And I think there's several of these apps that you can use.
I see. Okay, next question. I think you may have answered this one, but how often do you get their contact info and offer to send or email them a picture?
Yeah, I don't always do it, but 90% of the time I do, especially, I don't know, depending on how long the encounter is. Sometimes it's a very quick encounter and maybe I don't get all the information, and also they seem busy, and also that they seem like they don't care. But sometimes, yeah, or 99, I don't know, maybe not 99, 95% of the time, I'll ask for their Instagram and I'll say, reach out to me, direct message me, and I'll get you the photo. So, and I used to have like a Moo card. I don't know if you know these Moo business cards. They're called Moo cards. They're like a small business card. Sometimes I used to hand out those. One mistake I made with those cards or any business card is sometimes I would give the people the business card before making the picture, and then I'd kind of forget about it. And when I got when I got home and looked at the photo, I'd realize they were holding the business card in their hand, which looks really stupid. And as I've said, hands and eyes are most important. So,
well, that brings up another question that was asked: if the business card is in the picture, and this relates to the Diane Arbus picture that you showed with the person behind. Nowadays we have Photoshop, and it's almost child's play to remove distracting elements like that. Do you ever do that?
I don't like. I like my pictures to be really real, kind of warts and all, to some degree. Yeah, I think in general, technical perfection in photography is not something necessarily to be aspired to over, for me, authenticity and a sense of realism. I get the feeling with AI these days, with the ability to generate, successful pictures just by putting in a text prompt into AI. Those tend to have, like, one way you can tell an AI photo in some ways is that it has kind of that glossy sheen of technical perfection in some ways. So yeah, I think having a picture that's, you're seeing that background. It's not that perfect, that blurred out background. Yeah, it just gives a sense of realism, a sense of authenticity, a sense that we're dealing with real people in the real world. All that stuff's important to me. So no, I wouldn't, if I had made Deanne Arbus, hopefully I'd have the moral fortitude to leave that person still coming out of the kid's head.
Okay, well, if it's a moral issue, then
It's a moral issue to me.
on
It is.
that.
It is to some degree.
Let's see. Have you ever been asked to pay someone to take their photograph?
That's an issue maybe that might relate if you make photos of homeless people. I always will just pay a homeless person, asked or not, because obviously the person's in a vulnerable position, and I think it's great, like, if whatever reason is making me make that picture, I'm really happy to try to help out circumstances to some degree. I'm not a photojournalist. A photojournalist would never pay for any picture. That would go against the code of photojournalism, but that's not my stance in the world. So I don't pay people just in general. Like if I think they're not in a vulnerable
Do they
situation.
often ask? Do they sometimes ask? Sure, you can take my picture if for $10 or $20.
Younger people sometimes will say, and I'll just usually say no thanks. That's where maybe I'll move on and just have a great day. Because also one thing I will offer though, like if someone asks and I don't want to give money, I will say, but I'm happy to give you a picture. And hey, they're getting a picture from someone who in theory knows something about photography. It's going to be different than their friends, doing a phone photo of them. So maybe it's a little more special, and that I am happy to offer. So I think I think an exchange is good, but these are moral and ethical considerations. I'm not saying I even have the right answer to that. Maybe everyone should be paid, and it should go without question because it is an exchange. The photographer in these encounters is in somewhat of a power position once the person's agreed. I'm getting something from my portfolio. Maybe I'm going to get in the New York Times or something because of a photo I take. So, there's definitely moral and ethical issues that.
But they're getting the picture back, probably a really nice picture too.
Hopefully. That's why it's important. Like, that's why I won't usually take just one photo and move on. Because I almost think you have a responsibility to make a good picture if someone said yes. So, yeah, that means taking the picture, even, chimping it, looking at my phone or the back of my camera, making sure I got the eyes in focus.
I have a question. When you have somebody about to take the picture, how much direction do you give them for their eyes and hands?
The eyes is mostly where I'll give direction. And I mean, I do two things. I tend to walk in an arc around people, because some people look good on the left side, some people look good on the right side, or vice versa. And yeah, so I kind of walk in an arc. Sometimes I often find for the pictures I like, it tends to be a direct, frontal thing. So yeah, when I'm walking around, a natural instinct of people is to kind of follow me. Like if I'm walking around them over here, they tend to look over there. And then you get kind of that look over the shoulder like this, which actually can be a more flattering look. But I'm not really going for flattering. Mostly I see someone and they're already in some pose or in some lighting situation, and I already like the whole scene, and I just want to preserve it as best I can. So I tend to keep the direction to a minimum, and with hands, very rarely, I would say, even though they're.
So if the hands are in a good position, it's just a matter of luck almost.
Almost luck. And yeah, I mean, it is important. I mean, the hands are incredibly expressive and they really can help make a picture, but yeah. So for me, it's a lot of seeing that. I don't know. There's something about directing hands. I don't want someone, doing this or, doing this. I mean, those are, if you're a portrait photographer and, that's, you have to know how to direct people and pose them in these flattering ways. But again, I'm less interested in flattering. It's more just what attracted me to this person. Why do they interest me in the first place? And why do they tell the story of this city, New York, or tell the story of Virginia or wherever I am? Like that's what I'm interested in.
Okay, I think the next question you've answered already. I'll just read it. How do you choose elevation? How do by which I mean whether you are going to take a picture from head on or from below. And I think you mentioned your base place is right below the eyes.
Yeah, it tends to be because this is a wider. So in New York City, the 35 millimeter, I use a prime 35 millimeter lens, and it's kind of important in the city because the sidewalks are so crowded that you can't step back. So like a 50 millimeter lens during the pandemic, where there wasn't people on the streets and there wasn't people in the parks that much, I switched to a 50 millimeter when I was doing portraits in the park during the pandemic because it is more of a portrait lens. But on the streets of New York, you don't have enough room. Like those two guys, Jason and Rad, where Rad had died. That, like, I was pressed up against a store. Like I couldn't move back and they couldn't move back because people would have been walking in between us if they had moved back on the sidewalk. It's a really busy sidewalk that night. So yeah, so with a wider lens helps.
You shot that one with a 35 millimeter?
What's that?
You shot that particular picture with a 35 millimeter?
Yeah. And it's too tight. Honestly, I would have liked I would have liked a little more room. Like I would have liked it's a little cropped too tight. Which is too, I wish I had a 28 millimeter in that instance, that particular.
Have you ever considered a telephoto?
Not for street portraits, no. I mean, it's just like, I just don't see the role for it. And I mean, in candid photography, maybe, but even then I just, there have been a few really great telephoto kind of street photography projects. A Magnum photographer named Christopher Anderson did a great project in Shenzhen in China where he's using a long lens. Philip Lorca de Corsia did a project called Heads where he was using. So you can have candid telephoto, but I think with street portraits, you have to be engaging with a person. You have to be right there. So I'd say 50 is like the max. 85, great for wedding portraiture or something like that, but not for New York City street portraiture.
Okay. Next question. Do you ever, we talked about this one. Do you ever Photoshop out the background people? And the answer to that is clearly no.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in the last picture you showed us, you had a flash on your camera.
Yeah. So
in one of those pictures, you definitely used a flash. I think it was two guys kneeling down. One had a red beret and red sneakers. It looked like flash was used in that picture. Do you walk around with a flash?
I do. And so this is a radio trigger on top of my camera, and this is a flash. So when I use a flash, I like to use it handheld like this, It's not triggering now because I don't know why. Oh, there it goes. So yeah, so using a radio trigger, I can hold the flash wherever I can, move it over here. And I do actually like to shoot with the sun behind people a lot. So sometimes I like to have the flash for that reason. In terms of simplifying the background, I don't Photoshop people out, but actually sometimes I will use a flash really close to someone and expose for the flash very close so that the background goes almost completely into blackness. I don't think I showed one of those pictures, but that's something I'll do to sometimes minimize the background. So yeah, I do. But lately I haven't used the flash that much, but in a lot of the pictures you saw, there was flash used.
Yes. Okay, this is just a question for Jeff Hancock. I cannot read what you posted up there. I don't know what it says. My eyes don't work that small. if Jeff is here, maybe you can mention what it is. Jeff is not here. We'll just move on.
Gary,
Okay.
he was just listing all of the recommended photographers that James provided. us.
Oh, the screenshot. Very
Yes,
good.
sir.
So you can download that. That's good. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, next question. Almost all your subjects were centered. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a weakness for the centered composition. You know, it's something that I maybe try to not do all the time as much now. A lot of those are older photos, but I don't know. Yeah, I just have a weakness for it.
Fair
So,
enough.
you know, these days, yeah, I'm just thinking to some photos I've made recently. I mean, I do more complicated things like shoot through trees and leaves to get some things in the foreground and mess it up a little. But yeah, what you saw, a lot of centered composition. Don't be like me, kids. Vary those compositions if you can.
Okay, next question. Can you discuss a little your post-processing?
I do shoot simultaneous JPEG and RAW. I like having the backup of a RAW photo so that if I did mess up the exposure, I have a little more play if I need to bring up a shadow or something like that. So yeah, usually I use just Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw. I don't use Lightroom at all. I don't know how to use Lightroom. So I use Adobe Camera Raw and I try to keep it pretty minimal, you know, in most of my work. Little bit of brightening, whatever, you know, a little sharpening, just yeah, try to get it right in the camera.
Okay. Next question. Could you put up the slide at the end of your presentation that had all the photographers?
So that's what Jeff had screenshot, right?
I'm not sure what we're talking about. Is that the shot? George, if you're there?
Jeff had screenshot that.
Yes, Jeff uploaded the screenshot. Thank you.
That one. Okay. All right. Here's an interesting question, I think. How does a subject's story affect how you take the photo?
Well, I mean, sometimes what happens is I'll make a photo of someone and then we'll kind of talk after the photo. Sometimes while we're talking, and maybe I'm getting a little more of their story after I've made the picture, I'll notice something, you know, something in their story will trigger something, or maybe I'll just see a different way the light is hitting them and I'll make a new picture. So sometimes in that, you know, just dialogue conversation part, I might see something that changes my view of what the photo should be. So not that the story necessarily changes anything literal. I mean, ultimately these photos, ironically, are more about me than they are about the people. I just think that's a fact in general in photography. Even in candid street photography, you know, some people say that's an invasion of their privacy. You know, you're out on the street, you're taking these candid photos of people, but I think of street photography as an invasion of my photography, because if I share them, it's revealing really a lot more about me, about my interests, than about the pictures of people who you really know nothing about. And anything you know about them is an assumption. But with me, you can at least see what I've been interested in, and you can say, huh, he's interested in a lot of facial tattoos. Maybe he should get one, or whatever.
Yeah, it's a comment that the person had never seen so many facial tattoos before, but I guess you're on the Lower East Side a lot.
Yeah.
I think you like that neighborhood to shoot in.
I do. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great neighborhood. Okay. Here's a technical question. What camera and lens do you usually use for your street shots?
So again, the 35 prime lens, and I use a Canon R5 mirrorless, and I use this big camera for both candid street photography and the street portrait. So yeah, I don't believe in trying to hide myself or be too surreptitious, you know.
Well, yeah, it is a big lens for what's supposed to be a prime, right? Aren't
Well,
prime-
it's got an adapter, because the lens is an older lens. It's not a R5 specific lens, so there is an adapter that lengthens it. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
but
All right.
adapters work but great if you have old lenses.
So
Just
Canon's an old Canon too? Oh, no, as you said, it's a mirrorless. It's not.
yeah, it's a new Canon old lens.
Okay, let's see. We've got a lot of questions. Oh, here's one from Ginger. How do you get their contact information without it getting weird?
I mean, again, I find that most of the people have Instagram, so if I can just give them my Instagram, that's the easiest. If I do have a Google Voice phone number, so like I don't necessarily want to give my own cell phone number out, my everyday phone number. So if I have any kind of concerns, I might I might text them on my Google using my Google Voice number.
Do you ever hand out business cards or cards that say who you are, your name?
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to hand them out. I don't anymore, but that would have my website, and I'll give people any information like my website or my Instagram, no matter who they are.
Okay.
It's only my phone number that I might card.
Quick question though on that. In order to keep it straight, because you knew a lot of those characters by their names. If you're out doing a lot of images, how do you really keep it straight on who's who?
I used to write down in like a notes application on my phone, or sometimes I'll even take an iPhone photo after, use my big camera to make the quote unquote good photo, but use my phone and say, please say your name and information, and I'll record it. Actually, on this, again, on this camera, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a little button with a microphone. You can actually tape a little voice recording onto a picture using this camera. I'm sure any modern camera does that. So sometimes I'll use that and record and say, this person was so-and-so.
I see. See, you mentioned earlier in the talk that you were like a cat observing your surroundings. Have your instincts ever failed and you've gotten yourself into a situation you wish you didn't get into?
I mean, not in a really like threatening way, but my instincts certainly have failed in terms of whether it's a good photo or a successful photo. Yeah. So, I mean, that's where you just got to risk. I mean, another kind of great general lesson that I think is important in photography. I don't know what kind of photography you all do, but this is important to me no matter what you're doing, is having some element of risk is a good thing. And I don't mean necessarily risk to your personal bodily autonomy, but some element of risk where someone can say no, or you can fail and get a bad picture. That's kind of important to me. Let's say you were doing landscape photography, maybe it's the risk of waking up at 5 a.m. to climb a mountain and get that sunrise, and maybe the sunrise won't happen because of clouds. I just think that element of risk where you're laying something on the line to get the picture is important.
Okay. It being New York City and all, I thought that you could occasionally run into a situation that you wish you weren't into. I mean, I've been in those situations in New York City, and I didn't have an expensive camera, in my hands. I wouldn't want to, run that risk. Well, you got to trust your instincts. That's
like some of the most very intimidating people I photographed were clearly like the biggest sweethearts, and that's so great to realize, like people with dagger tattoos across their eye, very nice guy, that guy. So yeah, instincts can be wrong a lot, so
okay.
yeah.
So that's it for the written questions. So I'll open it up to the floor. If there are people out there who have a question about approaching strangers and taking great shots. Anybody? Okay.
I thought that the two of you managed to get a lot of information out there. So it's not lack of interest. I think it's just that was a hugely informative talk and follow up.
Great. Well, yeah, it's my pleasure. It's so nice to speak to fellow Virginia photographers.
Yeah, we do have a lot of street photographers in the club, but I haven't seen that many people doing actual portraits where they're having that much interacting because that is way hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's intimidating, but I just want to emphasize super rewarding. Like every encounter, it's just thrilling and it energizes you and you feel more alive. So, anyone who's even remotely curious, just try it out. Just try, and public events like celebrations, parades, people are happy. These are events where people almost expect to be photographed. And a lot of the people too, I didn't mention it. Obviously, the people I'm photographing, they like to be seen. They like, they're dressing incredibly. They like that someone's interested in them. So
I don't think they'd be wearing some of those outfits unless they were there to be
Exactly.
noticed.
Exactly.
And that dirty mask parade looks interesting. It looks like some great.
Yeah. The West Indian Day Parade, amazing parade, and Labor Day weekend up here in New York City.
Okay, well, thank you very much, James. It was really, really informative. I appreciate you coming to the group and talking to us.
Okay, well, again, my pleasure. Thank you to all of you. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me if anyone has additional questions in the future. Happy to answer them. And I think Gary has all my information. So take
Super.
care. I'm going to run. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Okay, Ginger.
Good night, all. See you next week.
Good night.
Good night.